Morning, everybody. Hope everyone's having a great day, week, month, year, life. Y'all see the topic. We're going to get started in 30 seconds. Let me make sure we got our pinned comments here over on IG. I'm live. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 platforms all at the same time. Yeah, y'all see the topic. I told y'all that I was going to talk about this. I've been talking about this over the last couple of weeks as we've been talking about current events, helping you all make sense of current events and help you all make sense of why someone like myself even needs to come in here and talk about the things that I'm talking about. One of the reasons that I need to come in here and talk about these things and explain these things to you all is because of the topic here today, which is the death of journalism. All right, the reason that people like me are here to do the things that I and others like me do is because journalists are no longer doing their jobs. That's why this has happened. Journalists are no longer doing what we originally expected them to do and asked them to do. I'm going to break this down, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I got 9 points that I need to share here today. So let's get into it because there's a good amount I need to get to, and I don't want this live to go too long, but it's going to go long enough to make sure everybody gets the point and understands exactly where I'm coming from, why I'm coming from there, where the things are going, and what it means for you and what you need to understand. So I have, if you are unfamiliar with me or you haven't heard me do this before, I have many times in the past railed on and trashed the journalism industry or the news industry, if you even want to call it that. They don't do news anymore. And journalism, when I say journalism, I'm being generous. They don't do journalism anymore. They used to. They're not doing this anymore. The news industry is no longer reporting news. They're making news. The journalism industry is no longer doing journalism. They are doing influencing and calling it journalism. And all of them are disrespecting the game. They're disrespecting their actual, the people, their constituency, which is the public that they're supposed to be serving. They're no longer doing that. They're serving themselves, and the public is picking and choosing what to listen to. And this has caused this, any of you who feels like there is division amongst citizens these days, that's not because of Donald Trump. It's not because of the Democrats. It's not because of the Republicans. It's not because of politics at all. It's because the people who we used to trust to help us sift through the noise and figure out what's actually happening, these people are no longer doing their jobs. That's why we have this. If you feel like there's division and you feel like people are not on the same page the way that we used to be 25 plus years ago, the reason is not even 25, 15 years ago. The reason why that's happening is because of what I'm going to explain here today and how certain people have dropped the ball. But I'm going to explain to you why they dropped the ball, because they didn't just drop the ball randomly. They didn't just wake up one day and say, you know what, we're just going to stop doing journalism. There's a series of things that have occurred that have led to them making these decisions and have led to these actions and have led to this result and outcome and position that we're in today. And I will tell you up front, just to be completely transparent, I'm a little bit happy that this happened. I didn't make it happen. I had no hand in it occurring, but I'm a little bit happy that this happened, because if it did not happen, then I would not be here talking about what I'm talking about, because you would need to hear it from me. But since they're no longer doing their jobs, now people like me get to step into the breach and do what should have been their jobs. Now we get to do it for them. So listen up, pay attention. I got nine points I'm going to share here today about how this happened. I will take all questions and comments when I'm done. So if you leave a question or comment while I'm speaking, I will address it when I'm finished. So go ahead and leave it in the comments, or you can hold it till I'm finished, and then I'll address everything. And by the way, I'm on 7 different platforms right now. So if you see me looking over here, I'm looking at YouTube, Rumble, X, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Over here, I'm looking at Instagram. Over here, I'm looking at TikTok. So I got 3 different screens that I'm looking at, 3 different lenses that I'm looking at, because I'm on 7 different platforms. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day. I'm a former 9-year pro athlete, author of 35 books, on 4 TEDx talks. Created this brand called Work on Your Game. What we do over here is we help the ambitious, people who are serious about getting to high levels of success, not those of you who are just okay with being okay, but those of you who are ambitious, perform at your highest level, do so consistently, and produce results. That's what we help. And our whole business, you can find out more about that by going to workonyourgameuniversity.com. That's a link in our bio. I'll talk about that maybe a little bit later, but let's get into the topic. First of all, let's get clear on what journalism actually is, because all of you are familiar with the term. All of you have heard people use it. You hear people out there calling themselves journalists, and some of them are not journalists. Some of them actually are. It's a dying breed, but there are some people who are actually still journalists. Let me get clear, and this is the baseline from which we're going to have this conversation. Those of you who are not familiar with me, or you are new to me, or maybe you are familiar with me, but you never heard me say this, let me establish this as a baseline. Anytime I'm talking about any topic on which maybe you have heard of it, but we may not all have the same opinion or belief or point of view as to what it means or what it is. I always like to establish that as a baseline so you know where I'm coming from in the conversation. So when I say journalism, let me be clear as to what a journalist's job actually is. A journalist has one job. Okay, there's one job of a journalist. The job of a journalist is to get to the truth of a matter, regardless of what the truth is and regardless of where that truth may be. That is the job of a journalist. So when someone tells you that they're a journalist, or you go online and you see someone's bio and it says journalism or journalist, anyone who uses the word journalist or journalism or any form of that word, that means their job is to get to the truth. It doesn't matter what the truth is, their job is to get to it. And it doesn't matter where that truth takes them, their job is to get to it. That is the job of journalism. Okay, so now that we understand this, that the basic responsibility of anyone who dares to use the word journalist, their job is to get to the truth. And again, if you're not familiar with me, I've told you that facts don't matter. I just did a whole live on that the other day. Facts do not matter anymore. The reason that facts don't matter is because there are too many different facts out there for us to even come to a consensus on the facts. Therefore, what matters now is the truth. Facts used to matter, but they matter a lot less now because people have gotten really smart in taking facts out of context and presenting out of context facts as if that's the entire story. It is not. The entire story is known as the truth. A fact is a piece of a story, is not the entire story. So if you're 50 years old, I could tell a story about what you did from ages 27 to 30. They're all facts, but is that the whole story? No, it's not, because there's 47 more years of your life that I'm completely omitting and leaving out of the story. So if you were doing something crazy in those 3 years, I can make you look crazy based on those 3 years, but the rest of your life tells a completely different story. So this is the reason why facts don't matter anymore, because people are manipulating facts and taking them out of context to paint a picture that is not the truth. So what matters these days is not facts, but the truth. Okay, it's not that facts can't be used at all, but you have to put facts in proper context, and proper context of a fact is the truth, which is all the facts. All right, understand that? So anyone who's calling themselves a journalist, they can't just give you the facts. They got to give you the truth. So anytime you hear a journalist saying, well, here's a fact, all right, you already know that they're probably leading you down the wrong route. And most journalists, people who call themselves journalists, generally, I'm going to give them credit here, generally, they're usually pretty smart. These are not stupid people. So they know how to mislead you with facts, and they know how to mislead you emotionally if they so choose to do so, because many of them have leanings, and I'm going to get to that in a moment. So let's talk about, again, as journalism is designed to do, is to get to the truth. And many people are throwing around this term journalist when they're not actually doing journalism. And in addition to other things I'm going to share here in these points. Here's the thing about journalism and the truth. The truth does not have a side. The truth is not Democrat or Republican. The truth is not liberal or conservative. The truth is not blue or red. The truth is not MAGA or whatever you call the other, whatever their opponent is, never Trumpers, whatever. The truth is none of those things. The truth does not have a side. There's no side to the truth. Now people say there are 3 sides to every story. There's one person's side, there's the other person's side, then there's what actually happened. Well, here's the thing with the truth. There are no sides to the truth. It just is. It's just a thing. There's no side to the truth. There's not one side over here, one side over there. No. So anytime you hear someone talking about the other side to a story, they're already not telling you the truth. They're telling you a story. It doesn't mean the story didn't happen, but it's not the truth. Everybody clean on this? Everybody clear on this? Okay, so I want you to keep this first point in mind as a baseline for the entire conversation we're about to have. And as you move forward, even out of this conversation, anytime you hear a person using the word journalist or journalism, are they actually getting to the truth, or are they telling you the version of the truth, the side or the story of the truth, or handpicked facts out of the truth that they want you to know based on where they want to take you? Again, this is what many people who we should call influencers, this is what they're actually doing. So now let's get into it. Point number 2, further. And we're talking today about how journalism actually died, how journalism killed itself. Here's the second point. What went wrong is that social media became popular. This started the death of journalism. Death of journalism began when social media got popular. And I'm going to tell you why that matters. Because journalists started trying to compete with social media. And this is where they started to go wrong. When journalism started to compete with social media, this is where things started to fail. If I had to point to one thing, one inflection point in the whole story arc of journalism to where it started to go in the wrong direction, is when the journalism industry or news industry looked around, saw what social media was doing successfully, and decided that, you know what, we got to compete against that. And that's when everything went crazy. All right, everything went crazy at that point. So let me explain to you how this works. So those of you who are over the age of 30, you probably remember when social media was not so popular. And if you wanted information or news, you turned on the TV and you watched literally the news, or you read a newspaper. You would get actual news from actual what were known as established traditional news sources. Way back in the day, there was no social media. You would just watch TV, you get the news, and there were only a few networks. What happened is social media came about. It started probably around, well, as soon as the internet became a thing, we started to get what became social media. But social media itself probably got really popular to where a lot of people were consuming probably around 2007 through 2010, around that time frame. I was already publishing at that time, but many people were consuming but not publishing. The publishing era started probably around 2013 through 2015. But the news networks noticed that, damn, all the eyeballs that used to go to watching me on or watching us on TV, now what they're doing is getting their information and their entertainment even from their phones and their computers, and they are no longer looking at the TV. So they could look at their stats. The legacy media TV networks, King Co, I see you over there on Instagram. They can look at their stats and see there are fewer people even tuning into our network, let alone getting their information from us. And they saw that social media was where those people were going. Those people weren't disappearing. They were not no longer consuming material. They just were getting their material from somewhere else. And the TV networks, what you have to understand about these networks is that these are huge organizations. These companies are big conglomerates with lots of shareholders, often public companies, very big teams, very big organizations. Any of you who's ever worked in TV or any type of entertainment that includes video or even audio, you know that the teams of people who work there are huge teams. So what you see on TV might be just a few people, but the people behind the cameras that you don't see is like, for every one person you see on the screen is like 10 people who are not on the screen. So if you watch The View on TV and with Whoopi Goldberg in them, and there's like, what, 5 women sitting there around the table, for every one of them is like 10 people in the background. So if there's 5 people on the screen, it's like 50 people in the background. And all these people have jobs, and they are full-time jobs, and they're all getting paid. Well, maybe some of them are part-time, but many of them have, these are jobs, and they all got to get paid. They all got to make their money, and they got to pay for that studio. They got to pay for the space. They got to pay for the cameras. They got to pay for the electricity. They're paying for the data. They're paying for the Wi-Fi, and even the files that they record on video. Those are huge files, and they got to pay for all of that. The storage space, all of these things had to be paid for, and these organizations could read the writing on the wall. If people stop watching our stuff, then we're going to make less money. I'll explain that in a second. And that means we're going to have to cut down our operations. People are going to lose their jobs. People are going to lose their security. People are going to lose their stock options are going to be worth less. And they realize we got to do something about this. For those of you who don't know how media makes money by advertising. So when you're watching, for example, I just watched or listened to the interview of Kamala Harris on Shannon Sharpe's podcast. It was not a very good interview. There was nothing of substance said in the entire interview. But anyway, I did listen to it. And Shannon Sharpe's podcast ran so many ads during that video, because they probably knew that they were going to get a whole bunch of viewers, which they did. They got over 1 million viewers as of now. I don't know when the interview came out, maybe a day or two ago. But he ran a whole bunch of ads because he wanted to max out on the money. I'm not knocking anybody for running ads. Everybody should advertise. If you're trying to make money, you should advertise, because it gets the eyeballs of people who are paying attention. So legacy media makes their money through advertising. So when you are watching a TV show, or back in the days when you watched a TV show, there would be commercials in between the content. Those commercials are where the money gets made. No commercials equals no money. So when you pull up a video on social media or YouTube these days, and you have to watch an ad, that's the money. The money gets made through watching the ads. YouTube offers you an opportunity to have no ads, but you got to pay. So they're basically offering you subscribe, you won't run ads. But if you don't subscribe, then we're going to run ads, because that's how the money gets made. And the advertising companies, and most of the money from advertising in the United States of America, if you didn't know, is supplied by pharmaceutical companies. And this is the reason why you should be very wary of anything that the medical system or medical industry tells you, because they are financially incentivized to push operations, interventions, and drugs on you, because they are paid to do so. That's a different conversation that we will have on a different day. But anyway, the legacy media companies realize, well, if people stop watching our stuff, then the advertisers are going to stop wanting to pay us so much money, Therefore, we have less money. Therefore, our business is going to start going backwards. And because we're a publicly traded company, if our business starts going backwards, it's going to make us look bad on Wall Street. And this could ruin our entire industry. This could ruin our whole careers. We got to do something about this. So here's what they decided to do. So actually, let me back up before I even get there. So when you look at networks back again, those of you over the age of 30, you remember when you wanted the news back in the days, you had basically like 4 or 5 options. You had NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox, and maybe one more. Eventually, another one came along. This is back when we had network TV. Then you got cable TV, where you had 100 channels was a big deal. Nowadays, you got 1 million channels. But then you got MSNBC, CNN, maybe back PBS. Maybe some of you got your news from PBS. But there was a limited number of sources. Now, understand, why does this matter? Why does this point matter? Why am I sharing this with you? Because even though we had millions of people, tens of millions of people in the United States 20, 30 years ago, we only had 4 or 5 sources from which to get news. And each of these 4 or 5 sources, even though they had their leanings even back then, they didn't lean so much in one direction or another, which meant if you got 100 people in a room, 100 Americans in a room in the year 2000, and asked them questions about what was happening in the news, those who watched the news, we generally all had the same information. Why? Because there were only 4 or 5 sources from which to get our information, and they were all generally going in the same direction. 4 or 5 sources, all generally reporting the same stuff. They might have different points of view as to how they report it, but generally they were giving you the same stuff. Now, look at what's happening now. What's happening now, if you have 4 or 5,000 or 4 or 5 million different sources of information, you get 1,000 people in a room and ask them about something that's happening in the news, you could get 1,000 different perspectives as to what's happening, because we're all getting our information from a disparate source. There aren't 4 or 5 main sources giving us the information now. Now you have 1 million different sources, and you get 1,000 people with 1,000 different perspectives on the exact same situation. This is what's caused the division amongst humans. If you feel like there's division amongst humans, this is the reason why, not because of any one individual person. And this is something that humans did, because social media is just us putting our stuff out. So as we continue here, why this would be a bad thing is because people having more access to more information and more platforms means it's harder for us to agree on the facts. So when you hear people talking about fact checking or talking about facts, period, we can't agree on the facts because we're all getting our facts from a different source. Again, 20 years ago, we're all getting our facts from NBC, ABC, CBS. Now we're getting our facts from who? Who are you getting your facts from now? You're getting your facts from a random person on the internet. Maybe you're getting your facts from me. Maybe I'm a random person on the internet to you. Maybe you're getting it from YouTube, maybe from TikTok, maybe from Instagram. And guess what? Everybody can choose their own facts. I just told you the difference between facts and truth. You can pick out any fact that you want, and it is a fact. That doesn't mean it's the truth. And this is what clever people are doing these days. Even dumb people are doing these days. And the legacy media networks decided that they're going to start competing against social media. And this is what they decided to do. And I'm going to get to that in point number 3. So me, for example, let's say I was running a library. Let's say I had a library in your town, and they opened up a movie theater next door to my library. And I saw that more people were going to the movie theater than were going to the library. Even some of my library customers were now not coming to the library anymore, and they were instead going to the movie theater. And I decided, you know what? If this movie theater stays here, I'm going to keep losing customers. I got to do something. So I decided to start competing against the movie theater with my library. That's a bad idea, because there's no way that the library is going to beat the movie theater. Or if they opened up what's something else they could beat next door, whatever it is. All right, I'm probably not going to beat them at their game. All right, and it's a bad idea to ever try to compete with another business or entity at their game. You want to make them compete with you at your game, not you compete with them at their game. And this is the mistake that the legacy media made, was that we're going to stop reporting as objectively as we can. And we're going to start competing with social media. So let's move on to point number 3 so I can explain to you what happened when they made this bad decision. Social media, this third point, we're talking about the death of journalism, how journalism destroyed itself, because they did this to themselves. Social media, ladies and gentlemen, supplies dopamine hits. In simple terms, what is a dopamine hit? A dopamine hit is the small burst of satisfaction that you get when you see a little notification on one of your social media apps. Hey, somebody left a comment. Hey, somebody followed you. Hey, somebody engaged with your post. Y'all know when you had those notifications on your phone, and by the way, you should turn all the notifications off on all your social media apps so they stop serving you these dopamine hits, because dopamine is like a drug. The same way that caffeine is like a drug or marijuana is like a drug, dopamine is a drug, which means you get addicted to it and you start waking up and searching for the dopamine hit, even when it's not doing anything positive for you. And many of you are addicted right now to the dopamine that you get from your smartphone, because social media can provide dopamine endlessly. There is an endless supply of dopamine from social media. Why? If you get on TikTok and you don't see anything interesting, well, you can just keep swiping until you do. Or if you don't like what TikTok is showing, you can go over to Instagram. You don't like what Instagram is showing, you go over to Facebook. You don't like Facebook, go over to YouTube. You don't like YouTube, go over to LinkedIn. You don't like LinkedIn, go to your email. You don't like email, go to your text. It will do this all day, literally all day. As long as you keep tapping and swiping and clicking, it will keep delivering dopamine hits. Now, the whole conversation on how social media has become an addictive drug is not the theme here today. But I want you to understand how social media works so I can help you understand why the legacy media made a mistake in trying to compete with them. Because the legacy media decided, you know what, instead of giving people the truth, which is objective and is not a drug and is not addictive, we're going to start trying to do what social media does, and we're going to start giving people dopamine hits. This is where everything went haywire, right here at this point. NBC, ABC, and CBS said, we're going to compete with social media, so we got to give people dopamine the same way that Instagram and TikTok gives people dopamine. So what did they start doing? They started taking the truth, which used to be their job, and they started splicing the truth up into little slices and giving you small pieces of facts from out of context from the truth. And then they started giving that to you. And they noticed that you and I started reacting to that much more actively and consistently than we would react to the objective truth. And they like this. Why? Because it brought more eyeballs to their platform, and eyeballs to their platforms equals advertising dollars. Advertising dollars equals people get to keep their jobs and maintain their careers. Let me give you all a 3-word phrase that you should always keep in mind anytime you are confused about something that you see and you're trying to figure out why people are doing something that seems to make no sense. Because what the legacy media didn't make sense for the long term of their business, but it did make sense for what they did in the short term. The 3-word phrase is follow the money. Follow the money. Anytime you see something happening in life and you're not quite sure, why is this person doing this, or how are they doing this, or how does this even make sense, or why are they going this direction? What's the benefit that they're getting from doing this? Anytime you see any professional or an entity or a person doing something and you're not quite sure how it makes sense, what they're doing and why they're doing it, just say the following phrase to yourself: follow the money. And when it comes to the traditional business world, it's always following the money. That's where everything is at. Follow the money, and it will tell you why it makes sense. The legacy media started competing with social media because social media was making money, or they were at least drawing eyeballs, and eyeballs are worth money because we're in the attention economy. When you don't have people's attention, you can't get their money. And traditional media understood how they made their money: get you to watch the show, run commercials, make money. Now with social media around, well, our commercial is going, we're getting fewer commercials because we have fewer people, because they're diverting their budgets. They're not spending as much money with us. They're giving some of that money to social media. Well, we got to get that money. We got to get that money, or we're going to go out of business. So instead of serving the principle, the foundation of what they were supposed to be about, social media, traditional media, instead of serving that principle of let's just keep giving people the truth, they instead decided, you know what, let's compete with social media, and we're going to try to just make sure we keep our paychecks. And we're just going to do whatever serves getting us more attention and getting us more eyeballs. Now, here's the thing about journalists individually, because what I'm talking about here is about what big companies did. So a big company made these decisions. So the bosses made these decisions. What happened is, any of you who has ever worked in corporate, you know the saying is shit flows downhill. So when the big bosses made the decision that this is what we're going to do, what happened is they passed the word down to their journalists, the people who work for them, people who have full-time jobs doing what is supposed to be journalism, and said, hey, you all can't do journalism anymore because it's not making as much money as it used to. So if you want to keep your job, here's what you got to do. You got to compete with social media. So look at what social media is doing. These small little dopamine hits that they're feeding people. You can't give people the whole story and the truth anymore because that's too boring. You got to give people little pieces of the truth, also known as facts taken out of context. You have to start competing with that. And this is how we're going to decide if you're going to keep your job or not. If we renew your contract next year, it's going to be based on how popular you are on social media, how many hits you get on your posts, how many followers you have on the internet. That's how we're going to decide whether you get to keep your job or you get fired from your job. That is literally what happened in the industry of news and journalism. This is the reason why you see, those of you who pay attention to this stuff, you see a lot of people who were writers for certain platforms, like even in the sports world, ESPN, the New York Times, Washington Post, these platforms that produce news, and they have people who were literally writers and journalists for them. You see a lot of them getting fired and laid off, and they go start their own Substacks and podcasts, and they become independent. They didn't do that because they had this entrepreneurial bug within them that they were just waiting to scratch. They did that because they couldn't keep their jobs anymore because they weren't hot enough on social media. That's why they lost their jobs. Not because they always wanted to be an entrepreneur and they just saw an opportunity. They got forced into being entrepreneurs because no one would hire them for a job because they weren't doing a good enough job of being like social media. So if they wanted to do real journalism, they had to go do it independently. So there are a whole bunch of journalists out there who are forced into independence because they couldn't keep a job doing actual journalism. And this is a problem in another way. Here's how this problem affects people like me and you, because that individual who used to work for the New York Times, if I wanted to read their stuff, I could just go to the New York Times site or their app or whatever, and I could find the writers that I liked. Now that they don't work for the New York Times anymore, now they're out there in the entrepreneurial abyss with their podcasts. And there's 4 million podcasts out there. There's Substack, and there's 10 million Substacks out there, and they're on social media, and there's 1 billion people on social media. I might not even be able to find this individual because there are so many other people I have to sift through to find the one person that I want. And here's the issue. The issue is now I can no longer get their material, but I'm getting somebody's material. And who knows if it's accurate? Who knows if it's truthful? Who knows if I even like this person? I'm sampling all these different things, and you're doing the same thing. So again, you get 1,000 people in the room today. Let me back up. You get 1,000 people in the room 25 years ago. We were all getting our information from one of basically 5 different sources. You get 1,000 people in a room today, each of us could be getting our information from an individually different source. 1,000 people, 1,000 different sources. How the hell can we come to a conclusion as to what the facts are or what the truth is? We can't. See, that's a trick question. This is where the division is coming from. Everybody's getting their information from somewhere else. And this is because the journalism industry decided to start chasing after social media. So what does social media do? All right, all of you use it. What does it do? It serves up continuous dopamine hits. Again, that's the brief but positive feeling you get when you open up an app and see that you got a new DM, a new comment, new engagement, other form of notification. That's why those little red lights on your phone that you see, hey, you got a new text, you got a new email, you got a new, somebody commented on your post on Instagram. Again, let me say it again in case any of y'all didn't hear me. Turn those off. Turn your notifications off on your phone so you can stop being a drug addict to dopamine. Only notifications I got on my phone are text messages, WhatsApp, where I communicate with my coaching clients and my team, and text messages, WhatsApp, and my phone calls. That's it. I have no other notifications. None of these apps that I'm going live on right now, I'm on 7 different places. None of these apps have notifications on. Why? Why should you turn off your notifications? I'm going to give you a little secret. You're not going to forget to check TikTok if you don't have notifications. You're not going to forget to open YouTube ever again in your life without the notification. You will not forget that you have a LinkedIn account. You should probably see what's going on without the notifications. You don't need the notifications. Turn them off. And the app's not going to like that I said that, but I got my job. My affiliation is giving people the game, whether the apps like it or not. So the journalism industry, folks, is based on telling people the truth. You don't want to compete with social media because social media is not about the truth. Social media is about giving you a quick hit. The truth is a long hit. Truth is a long game. Truth is like running a marathon, whereas social media is like running a sprint. Like if we ran from this corner to the next stoplight, that's social media. All right. Journalism is about running a marathon. It's a long race, and it requires people to invest time into learning and understanding and thinking. Social media does not require any of those things. Now, you can get some of those things on social media, but if you don't want to, you can spend all day on social media and do none of that. Everybody understand this? And this is the deal. The problem with all of this is people started to notice. Now I'm moving forward here. Problem with all of this is that people like you and I, we started to notice, wait a minute, NBC isn't being objective anymore. NBC is leaning in this direction. ABC is leaning in that direction. Fox is leaning in this direction. CNN is leaning in that direction. We started to notice that these mainstream networks that we used to trust to tell us the truth were no longer telling us the truth. Now, there's a reason why they stopped telling the truth, because they had to pick a side. Because on social media, guess what? No one is held to any standard of objectivity or telling the truth. I can get on here all day and be a staunch liberal if I want to. I can be a hardcore MAGA conservative if I want to, but I'm not calling myself a journalist. I'm just a person out here putting my message out, And you could say what we call people on social media, we call them influencers. I'm just trying to influence you. I'm trying to influence you to like the Democrat. I'm trying to influence you to like the Republican. I'm trying to influence you to do this, influence you to do that. See, when you're an influencer, you're just trying to push people in one direction or another because you want to. You don't have to, but you can choose to do that because the title of influencer doesn't say you are held to a standard of telling the truth. But when you give yourself the title of journalist, you are held to the standard of telling the truth. So a bunch of journalists started acting like influencers, yet they kept calling themselves journalists. This is why journalism is dying. And they're still doing it to this day. There are a bunch of people out there who call themselves journalists, but they're actually influencers. Some of them are actually paid by and working for political parties, yet calling themselves journalists. You can't be a journalist working for a political party. That's impossible. I can't take a paycheck from the Democrats or the Republicans and then call myself a journalist, because there's no way I'm going to report anything that could make the side that's paying me look bad, even if it's objectively the truth. There's no way I would do that. Do y'all understand this? So when you hear someone calling themselves a journalist, but they're on the payroll of a political party, they are lying to you. They're not misinforming you. They're not misleading you. They are lying. You're either telling the truth or you're lying. And when someone knows what the truth is and they don't give it to you, they're lying. Again, you see people can go to court. They put their hand on the Bible. What does it say? The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Not the facts, not your truth, not your perspective, the truth. They don't ask you to give the facts when you go to court. They don't say, get on the stand and give us the facts. No, they say, get on the stand and give us the truth. You understand the difference? They ain't the same. So social media, folks, is all about getting and keeping attention. The news is about sharing the truth. And this is a conflict, because the truth is often, in case any of you didn't know, the truth is often usually kind of boring. Do y'all know that? The truth is usually kind of boring. The truth is not really that sexy. It's not really that exciting. When you find out the actual truth of a situation is not nearly as sensational as the 30-second clip that you see on TikTok, or the 30-second clip that goes viral on social media. See, the 30-second clip goes viral because someone takes something out of context and tells you something has happened that's not actually happening. When you get the truth, which is the entire 30-minute conversation, is not nearly as exciting as you thought it was going to be. And see, here's the issue. Since all of us have been conditioned and have become drug addicts to chasing dopamine, here's what's happened. Now, when we hear the truth, it's not exciting anymore. It's kind of like if you're used to eating candy all the time and someone gives you a piece of fruit. The sugar in the fruit is not nearly as potent as the chemicals in the candy, and therefore you want the candy more than you want the piece of fruit. So if you want some sugar and someone hands you a Snickers bar, that Snickers bar is more addicting. The sugar in the Snickers bar, which is not real sugar, is all chemicals. All that stuff is more addicting than the sugar in a banana. So you're more likely to eat the Snickers bar. Why? Because you're more addicted to that sugar. Candy bar is social media. The truth is the fruits and vegetables. And why would you eat fruits and vegetables when it's candy right there? There's a pack of Skittles, there's some Twizzlers, there's a Reese cup, there's some Snickers bars, there's some Hershey's Kisses. Why would you pick up the fruits and vegetables if you could eat the candy? All right, and this is the reason why when people talk about misinformation, disinformation, fake news, and all that, et cetera, many people don't even know what the actual truth is, because you have not invested the time into finding out what the truth is. Because see, to know the truth, you got to invest time. Meaning you got to get all the information, all the facts, you got to put it in full context, and then you got to spend some time thinking. All right, how many people do you know who do that on a daily basis? Forget daily basis. How many people do you know who do that once a week? How many people do you know who do that even once a week? Get all the facts, put it in full context, spend time thinking about it, and then come to a conclusion. Nobody does that anymore. Even the journalists out there, I don't know if y'all know this, but journalists, when they sit down at the negotiating table to negotiate their next contract or to figure out if they're going to even have a contract and have a job, you know that their employers pull up their social media profiles and pull up their social media stats and say, all right, here's how you're doing on social media. Based on this, we can't keep you here because you're not hot enough. You're not popular enough on social media. How many news stories did you break? How many things did you come out with first? How many stories were you the first person to report that thing? That's part of the game now. And here's the problem with trying to be first when it comes to news, is that often the person who first reports quote unquote news, they're giving you incomplete information, because usually as soon as we hear about something, we don't know all the details. We don't find out all the details till days or weeks after the fact. Yet many journalists are in this arms race to be the first person to report on something when we don't even have all the information yet, but they got to be first, because being first is what helps you look good in the eyes of your bosses. See, this is the problem. And another problem, I'm giving you a list of problems that have happened in the journalism industry. So the journalism industry got into a fight that it can't win, is in the fight still right now, and is losing. The journalism industry is losing this fight for all the reasons that I've laid out to you thus far. Let's continue. Point number 4. So I just talked about this. Everybody, and we're talking about the death of journalism, by the way. I'll address all questions and comments at the end. Everybody started leaning heavily to one side, and it caused the public to pick sides. So when everybody's leaning to one side or another, the public starts picking sides. Like, damn, all right, now I got to lean to the left. Now I got to lean to the right. And the networks start doing the same thing. So Fox started leaning to the right. CBS, NBC, ABC started leaning to the left. CNN started leaning to the left. MSNBC started leaning to the left. They all started picking a side. And the individual people like me and you, we saw that they were doing this. And now we know. I know if I hear something on CNN, I got to take it with a grain of salt, because anything they say about the left, they're going to make it sound good. And anything they say about the right, they're going to make it sound bad. Now I know I can't trust them to tell me the truth. And every other network, we have a view on how they report things. Therefore, we know whether they're going to tell us the truth or they're just giving us their version of the facts. And again, the truth and the facts are not the same thing. So all of us, this is what we do. We subscribe to what we like. All right, how many of you, if you're a liberal, we got any liberals listening to this, how many of you ever turn on Fox News and hear what Fox News has to say? How many of you who is a conservative or MAGA or Trump supporter, how many of you watch MSNBC for an hour just to hear what they have to say? All right, for most of you, any of you who I just described, you can't answer the question because you don't want to hear it. Therefore, you won't listen to anything that you know is going to go against the grain of what you already believe and what you already think. This is where the divisions come from. That's not because of one person. That's not because of any politician. That's because of us. It's something that we have responded with based on the things that I've already told you, based on this timeline that I've explained to you, how this stuff all came to be. So we all have picked sides, and we only listen to things and people who are going to say stuff that we agree with. So if someone's listening to me right now and you think I'm a conservative, and you're a liberal, you're not going to listen to what I have to say. And if you're a liberal and you think, or if you're a conservative and you think I'm a liberal, you're not going to listen to what I have to say. Good news is I'm neither one. I can objectively talk about both sides because I'm not emotionally engaged or emotionally invested in either side of this conversation. Even though some people listen to this, they tend to hear something and think that I'm on one side or I'm on another side, but I'm not. I've done lives explaining to you why Kamala's going to win. I did another one why Trump's going to win. So tell me what side I'm on. Because each day I have people on the other side telling me that I was wrong. And I'm not asserting what I believe. I'm just telling you what is the reason why either one would win. The whole point being, most people can't be objective these days. That's the issue. And most people, I'm not talking about the networks and the journalists. I'm talking about people, period, cannot be objective about these things because so many people have gotten emotionally engaged in their side or their favorite candidate, et cetera, et cetera. Even if you can justify it, you have your reasons, that doesn't change the reality that you are no longer being objective about the situation for whatever reason that you're not objective. And the networks, again, when these networks are in the businesses of making money, they sometimes have to abandon the truth. See, when you're in the business of getting to the truth, it doesn't matter if it costs you money to tell the truth. When you're in the business of making money, it doesn't matter if you abandon the truth to make money. So you got to decide. Should I say that one again? Just make sure y'all caught that. When you're in the business of telling the truth, it doesn't matter if you cost yourself money telling the truth, because that's the business that you're in. When you're in the business of making money, then it doesn't matter if you abandon the truth, because again, you're about making money. So which business are these companies in? The mainstream legacy media networks, NBC, ABC, CBS, and whoever owns them, CNN, Fox, all of them, what business are they in? They're in the money business. They're not in the truth business. They're in the money business. The unfortunate thing for them is that 20 plus years ago, our parents' generations, they could be in both businesses at the same time. They could tell you the truth and they can make money at the same time. They didn't have to pick one or the other. Social media coming along forced them to choose. Do we want to focus on the truth and sacrifice some money, or do we want to focus on money and sacrifice the truth? They decided to focus on money and sacrifice the truth. That's why we are where we are here today. And again, this is actually a good thing, because what's happened is open up lanes for people like me to come in and explain these things that you would never hear anybody on NBC or Fox or CNN telling you what I just told you, even though it is 100% the truth. So let's continue. Social media, and this is still point number 4. Social media is always exciting. Okay. And again, if you're not excited about what's happening on one app, you can just open another one, or you just keep scrolling until you find something. The truth is not that, because the truth doesn't offer you 1,000 different options. What I just tell you, there's only one truth. See, facts, there can be a million facts. There's only one truth. So you can't look at the truth and say, all right, this truth is boring. Let me swipe up and see the next truth. There's only one truth. See, you can't pick and choose amongst truth. There's only one. There's no plurality to the truth. All right. The truth is singular. There's only one of them. Facts, there are millions of facts. So the facts are like you swiping up on TikTok or on Tinder or on Instagram. You can just keep swiping until you find something that's interesting to you, or something that you agree with, or something that engages you. The truth is only one of it. And if you don't want that one truth, then you just get no truth. In other words, you get a lie. Moving on to point number 5. We're talking here today about the death of journalism, how journalism killed itself. Is that journalism started eating itself alive. That's what happened next. Journalism started cannibalizing itself. Since they can't report fairly anymore because their fans won't bear to hear objectivity. So what I'm talking about right here, I can never get a job at CNN or Fox or NBC or ABC. I can never get a job at any of these places because I would be so objective that people would be like, I don't like this guy, Dre, because he's not giving me what I've come to expect from this network. So if you watch a network and you expect things to lean heavily to the left, and I get on there and say some critical things about the left or some positive things about the right, you're going to be like, hell no, I don't like this guy. My ratings is going to be terrible and I'm going to get fired. They're going to cancel my show. I'm going to get fired. On any network, if I was to do this, it wouldn't work, because the people, that's you, have been conditioned to want something that satisfies what you already believe rather than telling you the truth. So this is the other problem with journalism, is that we, you and I, the citizens, we have become conditioned to only hear what we want to hear. That's the problem. That's you and I. We have been conditioned to only hear what we want to hear. So when someone comes along and tells you something that you need to hear, but you don't want to hear, you can immediately do what? Change the channel. Because guess what? You got a million channels to choose from. What did I just tell you? 25 years ago, you had 4 channels to choose from. So if you didn't like anything on those 4 channels, you just had to turn off the TV and read a book. You didn't have any other options. Now you got a million options. So if you don't like what I'm saying, you can go watch somebody else's live and never, ever, ever come across me ever again in life. On YouTube, what do they call it when you start an account on YouTube? They call it a YouTube channel. Now TV is spread out. Anybody can start a TV network. Anybody can start a radio show. Anybody can write a book. Anybody can be a journalist. We call those blogging, podcasts, and YouTube these days, by the way, and social media accounts. Anybody can be a reporter. All you got to do is open up a TikTok account and start posting stuff. You can report whatever you want. It doesn't have to be true. You can say whatever you want to say. And I'm going to take all comments at the end, by the way. This is the world that we're in now. So no one has to listen to anything that they don't want to hear anymore. This is the issue. No one has to listen to anything that they don't want to hear. Back in the day, you had to hear it. If you were a liberal, a hardcore Democrat, and you turned on the news and they were saying some negative things about the Democrats, you couldn't really get away from it because all the networks are reporting the same news. What you going to do? You can't change it. Where you going to go? When Bill Clinton, let's say Bill Clinton, for example, he was president from 1992 through 2000. So if you're a staunch liberal, you're a hardcore Democrat. When Bill Clinton was going through his impeachment, no, I did not have relations with that woman. All right, the Monica Lewinsky thing. When he was going through that, if you are a hardcore Democrat, you could not avoid hearing about it on the news because you had 4 networks and they were all talking about it. And Bill Clinton got caught. There's nothing you can say. See, nowadays, if your favorite candidate, let's say you're a big Trump supporter, right? And something happens with Trump that's bad. He does something that everyone can objectively say, all right, that probably wasn't a good thing that he did or said, etc. You could keep changing the channel until you find somebody who puts a positive spin on it, because somebody's going to say, oh, it ain't that bad. It's not bad at all. Actually, it's a good thing. Eventually, you'll find somebody who tells you what you want to hear. This is an issue. This is a human nature issue. This is not a journalism issue. It is actually, let me back up. It is a journalism issue, but the root of it is human nature. Human nature is human beings, that's you, usually only want to hear things that you want to hear, and you will run away from and avoid and block anything that you don't want to hear. We didn't used to have this problem. This is one of the reasons why we have a weak society. The reason our society is weak today because many of you have been raised to only listen to and engage with things that make you feel good. As the saying goes, hard times make for strong people. Strong people create easy times, and easy times make for weak people. We used to have there were hard times back in the day. And when I say hard times, what I mean is back in the day, and I ain't that old, but back in the day, you would go to school, you would go to church, you would go to your sports team, you would go just out in the world, and people would tell you what you needed to hear right to your face. And there was nowhere you could go. Your teachers would tell you what you needed to hear. Your parents would tell you what you needed to hear. Your neighbors would tell you what you needed to hear. Your friends, your teammates, everybody would just tell you what you needed to hear right to your face. You couldn't run away. You couldn't pick up your phone and pretend you were on your phone. We didn't have phones. You had to deal with what was right there in front of you. And this made for people with some mental toughness. The generation that we have nowadays, if you hear something that you don't want to hear, well, you can stop playing basketball at this school. You can transfer to another school. You can leave this high school because you don't like the teacher. You go to a different high school. You can stop listening to your parents. You can listen to somebody on the internet. You can stop watching this guy on TikTok and start watching this guy on YouTube. You can stop listening to this network and start listening to that network. You can, I stepped over myself. You can unsubscribe from that podcast and you can subscribe to this podcast. This is what happens when we hear things that we don't want to hear these days. See, these days you have the option of running away and going somewhere else. Back in the day, you didn't have the option of running away. You had to stay where you were. You had to deal with it right there in your face. And the challenge of dealing with those rough things made you stronger, better, more mentally tough. The world that we live in today, because you have the option of running away, it makes you weaker and softer. And that's why we have a weak and soft society today. Many of you, some of you who are parents, I'll tell you straight to your face, some of you are raising mentally weak children. Because as soon as they come across something that they don't like, you facilitate allowing them to run away and go somewhere where they can be appeased and validated and affirmed. It's nonsense. Everybody doesn't need to be appeased, validated, and affirmed. Sometimes a kid just needs to be smacked upside their head and told to sit down and shut the hell up. I still believe in that. Now, I'm not going to do that to my kid. Hopefully, he don't get out of line too often. I'm joking, but I'm not. But back in the day, again, if you're over the age of 30, you know. I don't know how it is if you're black and you come from where I come from. Back in the day, you got out of line with your parents. There was a physical response to it. It wasn't, oh, let's talk about it. It wasn't, oh, go sit in timeout for a minute. Maybe we talked about it and you sat in timeout. That was after you got smacked upside your head. Not in place of getting smacked upside your head. All right. That's how it is. That's how, at least let me back up. That's how it was. Nowadays, I see on social media, I saw somebody saying this. Actually, I saw videos. Some of y'all may see these. I know on TikTok they post these. They'll show a parent, right, talking to their kid. Their kid did something bad, and the parent will slap the kid upside the head or be giving the kid a spanking, and people will have a video and post it and say, hey, is this abuse or not? I'm like, what? Back in the day, that happened all the time on the regular. There were no cameras. No cops got called. Nobody even mentioned the word abuse. That was like, all right, there's a parent. There's an involved and engaged parent. And the parents who didn't beat their kids, they were the bad parents. Nowadays, the kids who do beat their kids, they're the ones who are messing up. That's flipped. This is why we got a weak society. And I'm not saying that you have to go beat your kids. That's not what this is really about. What it's about is people used to have to deal with harsh things right to their faces and you couldn't run away. Nowadays, you can run away. And journalism, what used to be called journalism, is an example of this. If you don't like someone criticizing Donald Trump, you can just ignore everybody who criticizes Donald Trump. Or if you don't like people criticizing the liberals or the Democrats, you don't ever have to listen to or consume or follow anyone who could possibly criticize the liberals. And this has created a mental weakness. There's a book by Jonathan Haidt, and he had a co-author. I forget the other guy's name. It's called The Coddling of the American Mind. Can somebody put that title in the comments, please? It's called The Coddling of the American Mind. If you haven't read the book, go find the book and read it. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it in the bookstores. Those of you know where the bookstore is, go find it, get the book. The Coddling of the American Mind explains in other ways what I'm talking about here. And this is the generation that we're raising. So any of you who's a parent, you need to examine, are you raising a kid to be mentally tough and be willing to deal with challenges, or are you raising them to be mentally weak to where anytime they face a challenge, well, let's just get away from that thing so you don't have to deal with the challenge anymore. And again, this is exactly what journalism did, and it's a mistake. Journalism is supposed to tell people the truth, even if you hate the truth. The issue is it's hard to be a full-time journalist these days because if you keep telling people the truth, the audience of people who want to hear the truth is so small that you might not be able to make the same amount of money as if you were an influencer and just told people what they wanted to hear. So this is the issue. This is the trade-off. The trade-off is if you want to make money, if your focus is maximizing your money, you got to tell people what they want to hear. Then your audience will be like this. If you want to tell people the truth, not everybody wants to hear the truth, so your audience is going to be like this, and that means your money's going to be like this as well. So what you want to do? If I ask most of you that question, which one would you pick? See? You understand? So don't be mad at journalists. Don't point the finger at them. You would do the same thing they did. You would take the same thing that they did. All right, I want to maximize the money, so I guess I got to do what I got to do. This is how it works. This is what happens in a capitalistic society. And I ain't knocking capitalism. I'm a fan of capitalism. All right, I am a staunch capitalist. I'm a registered capitalist. All right, so you want to know what side I'm on? That side. But this is one of the trade-offs of capitalism. Understand that every situation in life, there are no perfect scenarios. There's only trade-offs. One of the trade-offs of capitalism is that in a capitalistic society, people will do whatever helps them maximize the money, and they will sacrifice other things in order to maximize the money. That's what happens. I'm not saying that's what everybody does. I'm not saying that makes people immoral or bad. What I'm saying is in the capitalistic society, that's what is, what's the word? Rewarded. The reward in the capitalistic society is doing the thing that makes you the money, not the thing that may necessarily be better or smarter or more virtuous, however you want to define that. It's whatever makes you the money. That's what you do. Y'all understand the game here? This is how it works. And actual journalism these days, if any of you pays attention to these worlds, whether in sports journalism, I pay attention to sports, I'm a former athlete, but other forms of journalism and just news journalism, you may notice that a lot of companies are laying off and firing a lot of their journalists. ESPN, for example, let's use this as an example. Any of you who's a sports fan, you may know about this. So ESPN, I've been reading ESPN since literally like 25 years ago. Back, they used to have this platform called Page Two, and a lot of really good journalists used to work at ESPN. Bill Simmons was at ESPN. Jason Whitlock was at ESPN. This guy named Ralph Wiley, he's passed away. He was at ESPN. Dan Le Batard, back when he was a good writer, he was at ESPN. All these guys used to be really good writers. So it was Ralph Wiley, there was Mark Stein, there was Rick Bucher, there was Jason Whitlock, there was Bill Simmons, Dan Le Batard, Jackie McMullen. Many really good writers used to work at ESPN as journalists. And all of them who are still in the game today, notice something, none of them write anymore. Jason Whitlock got a podcast. Bill Simmons got a podcast. Who else did I say? Jackie McMullen, she's pretty much retired. Ralph Wiley passed away. Dan Le Batard is a podcaster and radio guy. None of them is even writing anymore. Why? Because you don't make money writing anymore. You can't make money as a full-time writer anymore. There's no money in just writing columns. Why? Because people don't read. There's another thing. People do not read. If you had an option to listen to a podcast or watching a YouTube video or reading an article, each one would take you 30 minutes. Which one would you do? Answer that question. Podcast, YouTube, or article. Put the word in the comments. Which one would you do right now? You had an option. It's same information, but there's different ways of consuming it. You either listen to a podcast, watch a YouTube video, or read the article. Which one would you do? Article, YouTube, podcast. Put the word in the comments. Which one would you do right now? Then I'm going to tell you how this has contributed to the situation that we're in. And nobody reads anymore. This is the issue. People don't read. People still write books. And a lot of books to get written. I'm an author. I've written 35 books. Let me tell you the business of books really quickly. Business of books is not, I don't write books because I think people are going to actually read my book and get value out of it. Most people don't read. People buy books and don't even read them. The purpose of writing a book is to show that you have it because it's a credibility piece in the business world. That's what it is. A book is a piece of credibility. That's what it is. You know that if you go do a speaking gig and they buy 100 books from you, maybe 15 people in that audience will read the whole book. No, actually, I'm being generous. Maybe 5 people will read the whole book. The other 15 will take a picture of you with the book. Hey, look at this book. And I met Dre. They will never read the book. They'll never even get to chapter 2. I could put the last 3 chapters of the book as blank pages, and no one would ever call me and say, Dre, the last 3 chapters of your book are blank pages. Why? Because they didn't read the rest of the book, so they never get to the end of the book. They don't even know that I left it as a blank page. Different conversation for a different day. Sugar Rush, what's going on? Good morning. So all of this is to say this. The reason why I asked you this question about YouTube, podcasting, and reading is that the most important information, ladies and gentlemen, how is it disseminated to you? If you think about it, just think about this. The most important information in life is disseminated to you through the written word. Business contracts are written down. Your birth certificate is written down. If the government needs to get in touch with you, they don't call you. They don't make a YouTube video. They don't make an audio. They write it down. They put it to you in the mail. They mail it to you. They put it in the written word. The most important documents in history are written down. When someone wants to know if something is really true or not, what do we want? They said, put it in writing. Write it down. Any of you who works at a company, when you want to document that you had communication with your HR department or your boss or whatever, and you might need to take it to some type of arbitration or the court or something like that. You can't show them a YouTube video. You can't show them a podcast. What do you show them? You show them the email chain. Everything is written down. You got to put everything in writing. Any of you who's ever worked in law enforcement, for example, every time a law enforcement officer goes through any type of engagement where somebody gets arrested or a citation is given or something like that, what does the officer have to do? They got to write down every detail of what just happened. They got to do all the paperwork. Everything is written down when it's very important, and it needs to be documented, preserved, and consumed by serious people. And therefore, think about this. Since nobody reads, what kind of society does that create? Ain't nobody reading. So all the important stuff that's supposed to be documented, nobody's reading. Therefore, a lot of stuff not getting written down. Y'all see where this is going? This is the world that we created. All right, I'm not talking about just journalism. I'm talking about all of us. We did this. We contributed to this. Again, how many of you, when's the last time you sat down and actually read a book? I'm asking everybody here. I even hold myself accountable to this. I listen to books now more than I sit down and read them. I listen to books through audio these days because I don't sit down and take the time to read the way that I used to back in the days before we had all of this. Like 15 years ago, I couldn't be live streaming in 7 places. I might be sitting and reading a book right now instead of doing this. Instead of talking to y'all, I'll be reading a book. Now I consume my books through audio when I'm moving about my day. Now, the good news about the audio is that I can put it on faster speed and I can read a book that would have took me 2 months. By reading it, now I can consume that whole book in a week because I can process audio very quickly. The whole point is we don't read anymore. So of course journalism's dead. Ain't nobody reading. So who you writing your journalism for? Nobody reads. Dan Le Batard used to be a really good writer back down here in Miami. He doesn't write anymore. Bill Simmons, one of my favorite sports writers, doesn't write anymore. Jason Whitlock, good writer, doesn't write anymore. None of these people write anymore. They all got podcasts. They all on microphones and on TV screens now. All of them. ESPN, I brought them up for a reason. There's a guy named Zach Lowe. He used to write for ESPN. He just got fired like 3 weeks ago from ESPN. He was a very good writer. And at the same time they fired Zach Lowe, some of y'all don't know who Zach is. Don't worry, it doesn't matter. They renewed the contract with this guy named Kendrick Perkins. Some of y'all know who Kendrick Perkins is. He used to play in the NBA. He was a role player, very much a role player. Won a championship with the Boston Celtics several years ago. Kendrick Perkins and Zach Lowe are like complete opposites. They both worked in the basketball department. They both talk about basketball, but completely different ways. Zach Lowe would actually write out thoughtful, detailed, organized, objective articles. His main thing was writing articles about the NBA and about basketball. And I would read his articles. He had a certain column he did every week. I would read his articles. I would save it and read it. Kendrick Perkins does no writing. Kendrick Perkins, for example, has a book. I forget the name of his book, but I saw it in the bookstore once. I would not recommend reading it because Kendrick Perkins does not come out to me as a person who reads books. Therefore, I probably wouldn't want to read anything that he wrote. And these days, again, you can get a book written and you don't have to actually sit down and do any writing yourself. He has a book. I respect him for having a book, but I doubt there's anything of substance in that book because I listen to him talk. And by the way, any of you want to know what somebody's writing sounds like, just listen to them talk. And if you don't want to hear them talk, then you probably don't want to read anything that they wrote. I don't like hearing Kendrick Perkins speak, therefore I know he can't write. But I'm bringing him up for a reason. They renewed the contract with Kendrick Perkins and they fired Zach Lowe. Zach Lowe is the journalist. He's the one that actually does real writing and real thinking and provides real substance. Kendrick Perkins is very entertaining. He is very popular on social media. He says things on the TV shows to get people getting on the social media and reacting to him. And that's the very thing that gets rewarded these days. This is why journalism is dying, because the actual journalists are getting fired and the influencers are getting promoted. This is what's happening. All right, this is what's happening out here. All right, so any of you was wondering how this is going, this is where it's going. Let's continue. Point number 6. We're talking here today about why journalism is dying. Number 6, we got a 24/7 news cycle. And I just talked about this. This prioritizes speed over accuracy. The news is 24/7. So if you had a TV network, I'm talking to you right now. You had a TV network and your material has to come out 24 hours a day. Eventually, it's going to get to the point that you run out of actual material to give people. So you start making things up. You start making stuff up. You got to start creating news and creating things to talk about because there's not enough things actually happening for you to talk about them. So when I say making things up, I don't mean they're telling lies. What I mean is they'll just create these random debates. So First Take, for example, when Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless were the two hosts back when it was really good, they would just create these random debates. They would just make up stuff to argue about. Who's better, Kobe or LeBron? Just on a random day, they would just start talking about that. I don't know why, because they got to fill that time. They got to do 4 hours a day. We got to figure out something to talk about. And every morning they have a production meeting where they talk about, here are the topics that we're going to talk about. And if they don't have a story, they'll make one. This is what the media has to do these days, because us, you and I, we have this insatiable desire to be entertained all day long. What time does YouTube turn off? Does YouTube have off hours? No, it's all day. Does TikTok have off hours? No. Instagram? No. Facebook, LinkedIn is all day. So you got to keep supplying that feed. It's called a feed. They just keep feeding you. You keep scrolling, they'll keep feeding you. All right, you will eat yourself to death on this feed. I told you, this is an addiction, folks. It's not something you do. It's an addiction. You are addicted to your smartphone. And you are looking at it all day, every day, taking in everything that it continues to feed you because you're addicted. This is the way it works, everybody. So again, I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about you. I'm talking to you right now. You are addicted to your smartphone. Look at the screen time app on your phone. All of them have it. Y'all know what the screen time app is, right? Don't act like you don't know what it is. It's an app that tells you how much time you spend on your phone every day and exactly which apps you're on. Every time you pick up the phone, what's the first thing you do? How much time are you spending on that app? And you need to check yourself by that. You need to check yourself for that. This is you. All right, so social media is just giving you what you're asking for. They didn't make you be this way. You are responding to what they offered you. And because you're responding, they keep giving it to you. This is responding to what the customers want. Again, capitalistic society, that's what you're supposed to do. Give the people what they want. Y'all want this, they keep giving it to you. So there's always something that you can take in 24 hours a day on social media, even though there is not 24 hours worth of actual substance happening in real life. But you can be dopamine satisfied 24 hours a day. Do you see the issue here? All right, this is a big problem for news networks. Think about the news. Is there always something new happening 24 hours a day? Like literal, real news? No. I tell people this all the time. I don't watch the news at all. Episode 1474 on my show, I told you stop watching the news because they're no longer reporting the news. If something is real news, I'll find out about it. I don't have to watch the news to know. If something is real news, I'll find out. It will find me. Real news will find you. You don't have to go looking for news. If there's a storm coming to South Florida, I'll find out. I don't have to watch NBC to find out there's a storm coming. I'll find out. Somebody's going to tell me that the storm is coming because it's real news. Everything else is stuff that they make up. All right. So sometimes they end up fabricating things, making up stuff, making up debates, making up arguments. Why? Because they have to fill 24 hours of time. Filling that 24 hours of time allows them to say to the advertisers, look at all the people watching us at 3 a.m. The advertisers respond by saying, okay, we will advertise at 3 a.m. That means they make money and everybody gets to keep their jobs. Again, what business are you in? Are you in the business of making money? Or are you in the business of telling the truth? See, the business of telling the truth means you only talk when you have something to share. The business of making money is we're going to talk as much as possible so we can keep making money. This is the result of a capitalistic society. Again, I'm not knocking capitalism. I'm a fan of capitalism. I'm just telling you that every situation in life has a trade-off. The trade-off of capitalism is that people will prioritize money, which means they will sacrifice their principles in order to make the money. I'm not saying everybody does that. I'm saying this is one of the things that can happen when your priority is money. And this is what the media industry is. Everybody follow what I'm saying here. Point number 7. We're talking here today how journalism killed itself. Number 7, consolidation and corporate influence over news reporting. So as these companies start losing their ability to compete with social media, many of them go out of business or they get consolidated. So there are big organizations these days who own, there's a few organizations who own damn near all the news networks. So all the news networks that still exist, they're owned by a few people. Now, here's the thing, or a few entities rather. But these entities are run by human beings, and human beings have biases. Human beings have leanings. So some of these entities are run by people who hate the Democrats. Some of them are run by people who hate the Republicans, or they just hate Trump more than they hate the Democrats, what the Republicans, that is. And guess what? They tell them, the news networks, here's how you got to report. Here's what you can do. Here's what you can't do. This is what happens when you're under especially these corporate influences. So these news networks are big conglomerates rather. They have corporate structures. And one thing you got to understand about corporate is that things move slowly and shit flows downhill. They're highly bureaucratic, and you can't just say whatever you want. Any of you work a corporate job who's listening to this right now? Any of you who works in corporate, can you just say whatever you want when you work in corporate? No. If you work in corporate and your corporation is heavily conservative. You can't just go in there and just say liberal things that you believe in. Even if you truly believe it, you can't just go say that and keep your job. You can't just say whatever you want when you work in corporate. And these news networks are corporate. So by design, they can't tell you the truth because they're corporate. And in corporate, you cannot just say whatever you want, even if it's true. You get fired for saying the truth. You work in corporate, or what you think is the truth, quote unquote, your truth, even though there's no such thing as your truth. You can't just do that. This is an issue. So how are they going to be objective and tell you the truth when you know that they're run by people who have a certain leaning? For example, Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. Now, I don't know what Jeff Bezos's political leaning is. It doesn't even matter. But the Washington Post, last week, they made news. I don't know if y'all saw this. Every year or every 4 years, they like to put out their editorial team. And these are people who give opinions for a living. They like to put out their endorsement of which candidate they want to endorse. The newspaper itself is going to endorse this candidate. And they were going to put out an endorsement. It was never said who they were endorsing, probably Kamala Harris. But they were about to put out an endorsement. And Jeff Bezos at the last minute said, no, you cannot. You're not putting out an endorsement at all. He killed it. He said, no endorsement is coming from our newspaper this year. And a bunch of people on the editorial board got mad. They posted on social media about why they were upset and why we don't get to share our endorsement. And a couple people I saw, they said that they quit their jobs, which is if you're serious about putting your word out there, you quit your job, you start your own platform. Many of them didn't quit their jobs. What many of them did was just bitch about it for the weekend, and then they were right back at work on Monday. And a bunch of other people who call themselves journalists, who actually are not, were like trashing the Washington Post, like they're cowardly. Why don't y'all put out something? Y'all blocking it because you just want to support Trump. The LA Times was another one who had a similar issue. They're just trying to support Trump. These big billionaires are trying to help Trump out. So that's why they won't allow their writers to put out an endorsement of Kamala Harris, because I guess most of them assumed that the endorsement was going to be Kamala Harris. Well, Jeff Bezos came out with a statement just the other day. I don't know if y'all saw this statement, but you should look it up and read what he said. And in the statement, he said, there are two key things that any news organization must have. Number one, we have to be out there telling people the truth. And number two, people had to believe that we're telling them the truth. And it's obvious, and Jeff Bezos said this, he said, we cannot keep ignoring reality. And I'm paraphrasing what he said. Go look up what he said. He said, we can't keep ignoring reality. Jeff Bezos is a very smart guy. And he ran a company called Amazon. If y'all didn't know that, that's Jeff Bezos. And he said, the reality is the average American citizen does not believe that newspapers like us are telling them the truth anymore. We used to have their trust. They used to believe that we were reporting the truth. These days, they do not believe that anymore. They do not believe that newspapers like us are telling the truth anymore. Therefore, the first step that we're taking is we are no longer picking sides. So we are not going to endorse a presidential candidate this year because it's the first step in us winning back the trust of the general public. He was 100% correct. That's what the news organizations need to do, but they're not doing this. The New York Times, they used to be known as the paper of record. They were like the number one when it came to, they were like the Michael Jordan of newspapers, the New York Times. As soon as Donald Trump came on the scene, they lost all their credibility. They lost their credibility not because you don't have to be a Trump fan or a Trump hater to agree with this. They lost their credibility because they started heavily slanting the way they reported on Trump simply because of their dislike for Trump. And this caused, well, first of all, Donald Trump helped this out. He started calling them fake news. The fake news thing started when he would start talking about the New York Times. He kept calling them the failing New York Times. He just started trashing them on social media. He trashed them his whole first administration, Donald Trump. He was just trashing New York Times over and over again, all day, every day. And then what they did, instead of staying objective, is that they started trashing him back. You can't be a platform that is designed to tell the truth and you're slinging mud back and forth with another person, even if it's the president. That's the mistake the New York Times made, is that they started playing Donald Trump's game and they started trashing him even more. And through the process of doing that, they lost their credibility with the citizens, because we all know if I read something from the New York Times, I know they're not objective anymore. I know they're not being objective because I know they hate Donald Trump. So how can I trust them to tell me the truth? I can't. Only reason I would read the New York Times if I also don't like Donald Trump and I just want to hear something that makes me feel good. That's what they've done to themselves. They did that to themselves. He didn't do that. They did it. Because they could have easily just said, well, too bad Donald Trump's trashing us, but we're going to report on him fairly and objectively because that's our job. They could have did that. They didn't do it. And now where are they? I mean, they still exist. The problem is we know who they are. We have them in a box. We know that anything from the New York Times is going to be super negative about Donald Trump. They don't have a choice. And they tried. I will give them a little bit of credit, not much, but a little bit. They tried to make themselves look fair and balanced, but they can't help it. And they put themselves they painted themselves into a corner that they can't get out of, or they haven't tried to get out of yet. Only way they're going to get out of that corner is they have to get new leadership. And the reason that the Washington Post was able to do what they did is because they got new leadership. Jeff Bezos bought the newspaper, and he said, we ain't doing things this way anymore. This is the way we're going to do things. And if you don't like it, quit. If you don't like what the boss says, you quit. Otherwise, you got to follow what the boss says. So all those writers at the Washington Post who complained on social media because the boss said we can't endorse a candidate, guess what? How many of them quit their jobs? Not many. See, it's one thing to talk that way when you don't have the job. It's another thing to talk that way when you do have a job. They knew how much they could talk and how much they should get quiet if they want to keep their paychecks. Again, capitalistic society, that's the way it works. So many true journalists can no longer work in a corporate space while maintaining the integrity of their positions. If you're a true journalist, it's hard to work in these corporate spaces because, again, the corporation tells you what you can say, what you can't say. There's a guy named Steve Kim, Asian guy. He's a sports guy. And he used to work at ESPN briefly. He told the story that he was on Twitter when it was Twitter, and he retweeted a post by this guy named Thomas Sowell. You don't know who Thomas Sowell is, Sowell. He's generally looked at as a conservative, but he's a guy who looks at things as objectively as possible, and he's written many books. He's like 90-something years old, still alive. He's written like probably 50 books. And anyway, Thomas Sowell, Steve Kim retweeted something that a Thomas Sowell account posted. Thomas Sowell doesn't actually use social media. He's 90-something years old, but it was an account that just basically takes little passages from his books and posts them. And Steve said that as soon as he retweeted that post, someone at ESPN, one of his bosses, called him immediately, like within 5 minutes, and said, yo, you need to take that post down off social media. That's how it works when you work in corporate. They're watching you. And anything you say that goes against the grain of what they want you to be saying, they'll tell you, yo, you can't say that. Take that down. And he didn't stay long at ESPN. He took it down, but he didn't stay long at ESPN. So this is the issue, folks, is that there are fewer places you can trust to give you unvarnished truth because of everything I've explained here. 2 more points, and then I'll take questions. We're talking here today about the death of journalism. Number 8, the public no longer trusts these people. This is the issue. The public no longer trusts these platforms, not even the people, the platforms, and the people who work in these platforms. Most of us, again, have news platforms in our minds that we don't listen to anything they say because we know they have a reputation for no longer telling the truth. I just told you, New York Times has destroyed their own reputation of being the paper of record because they stopped telling the truth and they start telling you their version of the facts. And those are 2 different things. There's no such thing as my truth and your truth. There is only one truth. And they stopped being the tellers of truth because they jumped on the Trump train, the negative Trump train, and they killed their credibility in the process. And the problem is they still believe that people are beholden to them, and they are slowly finding out, and sometimes quickly finding out, that people are smart enough these days to see through their nonsense. See, 15 years ago, if a politician, for example, came out and started telling you a bunch of things that were actual lies, you didn't know they were telling you a lie till years later when someone uncovered and showed you that it was a lie. Nowadays, if I watched or listened to the interview of Kamala Harris, she was on Shannon Sharp's podcast just a couple of days ago. I listened to the entire interview. Kamala repeated a whole bunch of talking points that are not based in truth, a whole bunch of conjecture, and a whole bunch of the same things she's been saying her entire campaign. A lot of it was nonsense. And Shannon Sharp did not call her out on any of it, which is why he's getting trashed in the comments of his own podcast, because it was a nonsense interview. It was garbage. It was nothing but it was like a pep rally for her. And he didn't question her on anything that she said, even though a bunch of things that she said was nonsense and bullshit and not true. He didn't say anything. He just sat there and nodded his head to everything that she said. See, these days, we can point out the bullshit within 10 minutes. Back in the day, we didn't find out that something was bullshit till 10 years later. Now we know it's bullshit immediately. That's the problem for the news networks, because when they put out bullshit, people are immediately calling them on their bullshit. Whereas, again, 15 years ago, you could say some bullshit and get away with it. You build your whole career on some bullshit nobody knew. Now we know. This is the problem for them. Not a problem for us. It's actually good for us. It was a problem for them. The problem for us is this, that we don't know who to trust. The problem for us is that now we got to do extra work to find out what the truth is, because we used to be able to turn on TV and they would tell us the truth. Nowadays, we know when we turn on TV, they're not telling us the truth. So who tells us the truth? We don't know. Now you got to go do your own work and vet your own sources to figure out who's actually telling the truth versus who's not. Now we got to do extra work. You and I had to do extra work to find the truth. And many human beings, by nature, human beings are lazy. So a lot of people are not going and doing the work to find the truth. Therefore, we have more people who are confused or uninformed and don't know what the truth is because they're not willing to do the work to find out who actually has the truth. This is where the division amongst human beings has occurred, amongst other things that I've said already here today. Moving on to point number 9, last point, then I'll take questions. We're talking the death of journalism, excuse me, how journalism killed itself. Number 9 is now we have citizen journalism. And I just said this. We gotta go find the people who have the truth, and we got to decide who's telling us the truth, who's not telling us the truth, who should we trust, who should we not trust. And even though there are so many people doing it, including myself and many others, we have access to all this information now. Like nobody here can say they don't have access to information. You listening to this now has more access to more information today than your grandparents had access to in their entire lifetimes. You can access more information in the next 10 minutes than they accessed their whole lives, 60, 80, 100 years. Yet, despite the fact that we have access to so much information, human beings as a whole, as a general group, we are dumber and less intelligent than we've ever been, despite the fact that we have access to so much information. How is that possible? I thought more information makes people smarter. No, more information makes people dumber. I'm gonna tell you why. More information makes you dumber because the more information you have, you now get introduced to the paradox of choice. There is so much information that you have to pick and choose which information to consume. And if you make a bad decision or the wrong decision and you don't even realize it or don't realize it until later, now you have gotten yourself dumber because you got the wrong information or bad information, or you just never made a decision to pick anything because you got so many options, you don't even know where to start. So you never do anything. So now more information has actually made us dumber and less intelligent than we've ever been because of the access that we have. See, we only had a few sources. We were usually pretty well informed because they gave us what we needed to know, and that was it. Now we got so many sources. You're getting information from over here. I'm getting information from over there. They're getting information from over there. Nobody knows what to believe. Nobody knows who to trust. And all of us, we can't even agree on what is factually true anymore. We can't even agree on facts anymore, let alone agree on the truth. So I may think I'm smart because I think I got this information. You think I'm dumb because you got completely different information. And we both think the other one is an idiot because we have completely disparate information, even though both of us have a whole bunch of facts on our side. Y'all see the problem here? This is the problem with facts. This is the problem when people start talking about the facts. The problem with the facts is that there are always other facts. Every fact has a counterfact. This is why we are more divided as a people than we've ever been. And this is an indictment of journalism, yes, but it's also an indictment of all of us. All of us are doing this. Okay, and this applies to every industry, not just news journalism. Science, medicine, politics, academia, sports, all of these, we have so much different information. You remember that virus a few years ago? Who had the accurate information? Was it the CDC? Was it the government? Was it Dr. Fauci? Who had the accurate information during that virus? We don't know. We don't know. Everybody was saying something different. Who do we trust? We don't know. See, that's the issue. All that said, let me recap these points and I'm gonna take questions and comments. You got a question or comment, put it in the comment section. Let me quickly go over the 9 points I just gave you, how journalism killed itself. Number 1, journalism is designed to get to the truth. That's the objective of journalism, is the truth. What went wrong? Number 2, social media got popular and journalism started competing with social media. Number 3, the result is they started fishing for giving people dopamine hits instead of giving you the truth. And dopamine is addictive. The truth is not addictive. Number 4, everyone leaned heavily to one side and it causes the public to pick sides. Now people can't even agree on things. Number 5, it started cannibalizing itself because you can't report fairly anymore to people who can't bear to hear anything that's fair. They just want to hear what they want to hear. Number 6, the 24/7 news cycle was prioritizing speed over accuracy, content over substance. Number 7, consolidation and corporate influence over news reporting. If you work in corporate, you can't just say whatever it is you want to say. You got to say what the boss tells you can say, and don't say what they tell you that you can't say. This means people cannot tell you the truth while working there. Number 8, decline in public trust. People just stop trusting the media because we know that they're not telling us the truth. And number 9, citizen journalism, which is good in some ways, but also a challenge because now we got to do all this extra work to figure out who's telling the truth and who's not. All that said, let's go to the comments. You got something, put it in the comment section right now. Over on YouTube, Justin said, happy to see the transition. I remember being in middle school, trying to make the team and was watching your videos all the time. Yes, sir. Good to see you, Justin. Mars Mosiris on YouTube. Said journalism is alive and well. Channels like yours and many others provide an opportunity for open dialogue. Well, it's alive in that way. I get what you're saying. I'm really talking about traditional journalism. I get what you're saying. Marzo said the main media is obviously fake and news bias. Yeah, basically. I get what you're saying. I get your point. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see what we got over here on IG. If you got a comment on TikTok, I'm coming over there next. TikTok usually has the most comments. That's why I save TikTok for last. King Co says they're chasing ratings and viewership, not real journalism. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what they're doing. And that's because social media did so good at it that they felt like they had to jump into it. Kaza Mia said the book is called The Coddling of the American Mind. Yes, you got it right. So all y'all should read that book so you understand that part that I was talking about. All right, let's see what we got on TikTok. Sugar said, will you define facts and truth? Yes, truth is all the facts in full context, whereas a fact can be pulled out of context. So I did a live on this a couple of days ago. I don't know if you saw it, Sugar Rush, but a fact can be Michael Jordan at the end of the third quarter of an NBA playoff game. He was 2 for 22 from the floor. Another fact is that the Bulls lost that game. That's a fact. Those are both facts. The truth is the Bulls did lose that game, but they won the other 4 games in the series, went to the NBA finals, and they won the championship that year. That's the truth. So you can pull a fact out of context and make somebody look crazy if you want to. But when you tell people the truth, then it often changes the story. So if you look up the definition of facts and truth, they actually use the other word in their definitions. That's why I didn't use the dictionary definition. But a fact, again, you can pull a fact out of context. You cannot pull a truth out of context. No such thing as a truth out of context. Truth is just one thing. It's singular, and truth is not proprietary. Meaning there's no Dre's truth and Mike's truth and Lisa's truth and Chris's truth. There's one truth. Now, facts, there could be a million facts. There is only one truth. So that's the difference between the two. And if you're not telling the truth, you're lying. So Ice Wallow Cone says, what do you think about people who only vote for Kamala because of abortion rights? Your vote, your choice. If that's what they want to do, they have a right to do it. That's the good thing about voting, is that people have a right to vote however they want to vote. Maha says, everyone has their own bias of truth, which they count as facts. Yes, that's how many people think. And that's the reason why I keep emphasizing no such thing as your own truth. There's only one truth. Let's see. I'm going through the comments on TikTok. So if you got something, go ahead and post it. Let's see. Dear Dolly says Trump for president. Maybe. We'll see in a week. We will see in a week. Maha says, I remember before Obama being president, the news was very unbiased, which it was like that again. Yes, it was around that time period that things started happening, and it got crazy when Trump got in. B-Man says, thoughts on how successful the USA economy rebounded compared to other G7 countries? You're asking the wrong person. That's not my area of focus. B-Man said, abortion is protected in the Bible. Okay. Spooky says, only I have the truth, LOL, grifter. I didn't say that. I said there's only one truth. Nobody has the truth. The truth is not proprietary. Do you know what proprietary means? Proprietary means owning it. There's no ownership of the truth. There's only one truth, and it applies to everybody. Nobody owns the truth. So what you're saying is a non sequitur. CWB says, a Dre Baldwin live stream. Hope you're well. Guess I should follow your content again. You should have never stopped following. Who the hell were you paying attention to if you weren't following me? I apologize on your behalf that you were following somebody other than me, but glad that found that you came back, if you're coming back. Enlightenment says, Rodney Howard Brown, pastor at Fire Church in Tampa, Florida, big contributor. Contributor to what? I don't know what you're referring to. MILF Shake said, I turned my notifications off years ago. Good. Everybody should turn their notifications off. Popular Thunder said brainwashing. Yeah, I don't know what part you're referring to. Yes. But yeah, Maha said opinions on headlines. Well, the headlines is what get people to click. So I get why they do that. And that's part of the game. Dustin said, I'm sure this has some influence of what the media is doing is much bigger. Yes, for now, but they're losing influence. That's the issue. They're still losing this battle. So I told you that they lost the battle of social media. They're still losing. They're still trying, but they're losing. I mean, mainstream media still exists. but they don't have nearly the audience that they used to have. So, for example, if you watch the CNN or ABC TV show, Donald Trump was on Joe Rogan and got 35 million views. The last I looked, had 35 million views just on YouTube alone. That's not even counting the Spotify listens. 35 million. No TV networks doing that these days. So they're losing this battle, actively losing. And every day is getting worse. Dustin said, you don't think that the Democrat Party controls the media? I think they control a good amount of it. If there was a balance of 100%, I think Democrats have more of it than the conservative side has. I don't think they control all of it because you have Fox, which tends to lean more conservative. And then social media is the media that matters the most these days. Social media has more sway than TV. So that's the thing. Again, Joe Rogan, what is he? I mean, technically he calls himself a liberal, but he seems to be a pretty open-minded, down-the-middle type of guy. And again, he had Trump on the show. 35 million views last I checked. Elon Musk bought X. Well, Twitter turned it into X, and Elon Musk is a Trump supporter. So things are starting to sway in another direction. So do the Democrats have more control over legacy media than the Republicans? Yes, but legacy media is dying. And on social media, conservatives are starting to get more momentum. Let's just put it that way. Or conservative messages, and not even conservative people, but just the conservative message is getting more momentum. And even when conservatives had no pieces back in 2016, Trump still won. So we shouldn't put too much credence into any of this, because when all the message was Trump is terrible, he still got a bunch of votes. So, hey, think about that. So let's see. Sugar Rush, I saw you in there earlier. Let's see. P. Diddy, D. Pitty said, put a dimple in your tie. People listen to you more. LOL. Reclass says, I get my news from TikTok. A lot of people do. Now, 5 years ago, that would have been a joke, but now I know you're serious. That's what a lot of people get their information from the internet or social media apps. And which is fine now. I mean, it wasn't a big idea 5-7 years ago, but now that's the main place people get their information, because we know we can't trust those other platforms. And some of you have been raised on social media, so it makes sense. Brooke Boymel said, this man is cooking. Thank you. I am cooking. You're right. Let's see. Audrey said, who do I think is going to win? Well, if I knew who was going to win, I don't have an opinion as to who's going to win. But if Kamala wins, there are reasons for that. If Trump wins, there are reasons for that. I did a live on each one. I did about 2 hours on each one. So if you want to know my perspectives, then go listen to those that I did already, like 2 weeks ago. You can find it on YouTube. And by the way, I'm on YouTube. So those of y'all who are not watching me on YouTube, I'm also on YouTube. So let's see. Over on Rumble, CWB said, did I get Shadow Man on YouTube? I'm still on YouTube, and we're working on fixing whatever's happening on YouTube. Am I shadow banned? I don't know. They don't. It's not like they announce it. Hey, Dre, you're shadow banned. They don't tell you, probably, but I don't know. There's no official way to know if you're shadow banned. I'm on Rumble because Rumble Studio allows me to broadcast to multiple platforms at the same time. TikTok doesn't have anything that does it. I mean, not TikTok. YouTube doesn't have anything that does that. That's why I got on Rumble, because they offered this opportunity. I got Rumble, YouTube, and X all at the same time. That's why I got on Rumble. Sugar Rush, I guess it says something you like. Thank you. At this point, I feel like the young folks think being a Democrat is cool, meaning being a rebel. Possibly. Not all of them. And there are some who think the exact same for the opposite party. Let's see. Anderson Cooper just got reamed by people for asking follow-up questions. Yeah, exactly. Well, who does he work for? That's the thing. Who does he work for? So he got reamed by people who listen to that network. That's the issue. Someone keeps asking Trump or Kamala. I just answered that question. Cody said 26 and I know. Yes. Yeah, Coddling of the American Mind. If you haven't read that book, go read that book. Oh, by the way, Work on Your Game University. That's what I do. That's my business. That link is in my bio. You want to work with me directly, coaching, courses, all of our stuff is in the university. Leslie says, not beating your kids is called discipline. There's a difference. Well, yes, I agree with you. But these days, people are throwing out this word. Well, beating your kids can be discipline, but people are throwing out the word abuse when they see it, because it's not as prevalent as it used to be. Problem is no parent disciplines. Well, no, they still do. It's just not as prevalent. It still happens, just not as out there as it was, not as normal as it was. Thank you, E Highway. Appreciate it. Glad you liked it. Riri, good to see you. Said nobody reads. Yes, people do not read. I mean, more books are coming out than ever, and fewer people are reading. So figure that one out. Reckless says YouTube or TikTok. Right now, TikTok. Right now, TikTok is our best platform as far as doing the live streams, as far as the audiences, as far as growth. TikTok is doing the best for us right now, but I still publish to every platform because you never know. Things can change. 6 months ago, I wasn't even messing with TikTok at all, but now TikTok is our best platform. So you never know. It can change that quickly. How do I find genuine people? Well, first you got to start by being a genuine person, and then you got to define what a genuine person is, and then ask yourself, where do people like that gather? And then you go to that place. So that's what you do. Sugar Rush said you will watch it on YouTube. Yeah, see, a lot of people rather watch video or listen to audio than read something. Riri said, I used to read a lot of books. I got old. My eyes are bad. Okay, that can happen. I see that. Thank you, Meg. So I started reading for fun again. Good. Shout out to people who read. So you write things down because people can say, I never said that. Yes, that's also true, right? Especially in business. I'm enjoying your audio book, work on your game. Good stuff. Glad you got it. All my books are on audio, by the way. So those of you who don't like to actually read, all my books are available on audio. Just go to audible.com. Y'all can find my books. I enjoy listening to you while I'm on my work break. You speak common sense. Thank you. I'm glad that I'm speaking common sense. Not everybody agrees, Riri, but I'm glad you agree. Some people think I'm not speaking common sense. Ahmad said Perkins played the game is a difference. There's not a difference. Playing the game is part of what got him there. But at the same time, Perkins doesn't have the capability of doing journalism. So he didn't really play the game. He just is who he is. Playing the game means you have options. Kendrick Perkins did not have the option of doing journalism. So he didn't play the game. Playing the game is when you could do A or B and you choose A or B. Kendrick Perkins does not have the option of A, so he could only do B, and B just happens to be working right now. That's the accurate way of describing it. Milkshake28 said, I like you. You're good. Thank you. Me too. I like me, and I believe I'm good too. So thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. I don't watch the news. When I discovered it was fake. When did you discover that? That's all I want to know. I'm Queen Ace. All bought for sure. Told what to expose. Yes, exactly. I'm Queen said, look at the several news people coming out with truth, but were fired from their news job. Yeah, that's how it goes. Someone said Anderson Silva. I look better than him. Someone said, why do you wear a mic that isn't even connected to your phone? I'm on 3 different devices. This mic is connected to my Instagram stream, not my TikTok stream. So this mic is going over here, not over here. California Living said, you trust Donald Trump. All he does is lie, bro. All politicians lie. Name one politician who doesn't lie. They all lie. What most people say about Trump, they say, well, he lies the most. No, he doesn't. He lies the same amount as all the rest of them, especially if you're running for president. They all lie the same amount. It's just people, Donald Trump's style of how he says what he says is what causes people to dislike him. It's not what he says, it's how he says it. Whereas Kamala lies to you with a smile on her face and says it calmly and let's say in a soothing way. Donald Trump can tell you a lie in a brash and abrasive way, but they're both lying. Most people are more tuned into their feelings than what's actually true. But they're both lying. Elon and Trump will make America better. Oh, we'll see. Someone says, am I working on writing another book? Always. Yes. I always got other books on. I got probably about 7 books in the pipeline right now. Maybe more than that. Where should we get the truth? That is the existential question. That's the existential question. You have to, what I would suggest you do is that you survey. When I say survey, I mean sample, test out a bunch of different people and see what they're talking about and how they explain the things that they believe, and then decide who is giving you the most objective version of what's happening. So you got to decide, really. It's really a matter of personal preference. Personally, when it comes to news, I heard Steve Bannon got out of lockup the other day. So shout out to Steve Bannon. Welcome home to him. I like Megyn Kelly. She's pretty good. Social media has been around for a while. Someone chanted fake news. Now it's this. Well, it wasn't social media that made that. That was traditional media that is fake news, not social media. Gary Webb. Yeah, I know about Gary Webb. I was watching a video about him the other day. Terrell said, what does your brown skinned mother think of what you are doing? I don't think she even knows about social media. My mom's like 60 something years old. I don't think she knows anything about this world. So I don't think she thinks anything. Politics is a dangerous topic for a motivational speaker to address. Thanks for doing it fairly. I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm a business owner. Motivational speaking is something that I do, but that's not my full-time business. And it's not dangerous for me because I have no bosses. I get what you're saying. I have no bosses. I can talk about whatever I want. And anybody who says we're not going to book Dre as a speaker because he said ABC on TikTok, so what? I'll book somebody else. JBB said, what's the topic of the day? It's in the title. The death of journalism. Objectivity is a rare trait these days. Bravo, Dre. Thank you. I try to be as objective as I can. All of you should understand it's impossible for any human being to be completely objective. Nobody can be completely objective because we're human. Every human has their own biases, leanings, opinions, etc. I have opinions, I have leanings, I have biases too. One of my biases is that I try to be objective. I try to see things from both sides. So some people don't like that because they're so heavily on one side or the other, but other people, some of you who are commenting, you appreciate that. So I appreciate you all for appreciating it, because if there weren't people who appreciated it, then I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. CWB says the government hates TikTok because they can't control it. Yeah, so on that note, speaking of that, I should probably want Trump to win because he's not going to try to stop TikTok. But if Harris wins, she might try to stop TikTok. So that would be bad for anybody who's on TikTok. So on that note, I might want to lean Trump, but I'm not. I told you all who to vote for. I did a live on this last week, who to vote for in 2024. I did a whole live explaining who you should vote for. If you want to know the answer, go watch that live. It's like 2 hours long. Ilulia said, you're awesome, but I'm 65 and very astute on social media every day. Yeah, I understand. I'm not saying people who are 60 something don't use social media. I'm saying my mom does not use social media. That's what I'm saying. Esther says, question, do you make over 400K a year? Do you work for the IRS? I ain't answering that question. I appreciate you asking, but I ain't answering it. I have nothing to gain by telling people on social media what I got. So I appreciate you asking, but no way am I engaging in that question. So anyway, I do these lives every Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern. WorkOnYourGameUniversity.com. That's where I do all my coaching, get access to all of our courses and trainings. If you like stuff like this, I talk about this from different angles like business, entrepreneurship, mindset, personal development, professional development, leadership, communication skills, selling yourself, building a brand, and a whole bunch of other things in between. That's all at WorkOnYourGameUniversity.com. I'll be doing another live tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern. And I like this kind of talking about current events. This isn't really a current event. It's kind of sort of current events, but I will be talking about current events between now and, of course, Election Day, because it's coming up. So I might get more specific on like something actually happening right now over these next. So we got Thursday, Friday, and then Monday and Tuesday. So definitely over these next few days. So y'all stay tuned for that. And what else? Someone asked, do I watch Nick Fuentes? I've heard of him, but I do not watch him. I have heard of him. I don't really know much about the guy. And DeAndre Hunter would laughed at that question. And Esther said, exactly, because that's why you're voting for Trump, because he's going to give you tax breaks. All right, I'll address this last. This will be the last comment I respond to before we wrap this up. So, Esther, here's what you need to understand. The biggest tax that Americans pay is called inflation, not the taxes that you pay every April to the government with your accountant. That's not the biggest taxes that you pay. The biggest tax you pay is inflation, which is the increasing cost of living life. That's the real tax. So when the government talks about, every person who runs for president says, I'm going to give you this tax break, that tax break, those don't really matter. The real tax, because first of all, you got to understand the government's broke. Actually, government's not broke. Broke would mean you have zero money. The government's in debt. The government is $35 trillion in the red. They have no money. So when a president says that we're going to give the people something, that's a lie, because they don't have anything to give. The government has no money. So they can't give you anything. So y'all remember when they had the stimulus checks that went out to people during the virus a couple of years ago? Where'd that money come from? The government's broke. They're $35 trillion in debt. They had no money then. They have no money now. So what they do is they go to the Federal Reserve Bank, which is not federal. There are no reserves, and it's not a bank. And they print new money. They put new money into circulation. Every time you put more money into circulation, the value of the previous money no longer is less. What happens is the value of your dollar goes down. So any of you who has $1 in your pocket right now, every day the government is printing new money. Therefore, the value of that dollar has decreased, meaning your dollar buys less today than it bought yesterday. So if you want to know, ask your grandma, how much did it cost to go to the movies when you were 15? And they'll tell you it was like 25 cents or $1. Now, how much does it cost to go to the movies? It costs like $50. What's the difference? The value of the dollar has gone down. What does all this mean? That's inflation. That cost you cannot avoid. All right. There's no tax break that a politician can give you that will allow you to avoid that cost, because inflation affects every single thing that you pay for: your gas, your car, your rent, your mortgage, your clothes, your diapers for your baby, the lunch that you're going to eat this afternoon. Every single thing you pay for, the cost of it goes up because the value of your dollar goes down. And that happens because the U.S. government is broke. It is in debt. It is $35 trillion in debt. That will continue forever. It never ends. That's the real tax that you pay. It is not the taxes that you pay every April that you need to be concerned about. You need to be concerned about the cost of inflation. The issue is inflation will always continue until or unless the United States government gets overthrown and we destroy the whole thing and we get complete chaos and a completely new system. If that happens, a bunch of people are going to die and get killed because there's going to be chaos in the streets. There'll be literally civil war in America. If you don't want that, then inflation will always increase, which means there will be no middle class. There will only be poor people who can't afford anything and rich people who can afford everything. So if you're in the middle class right now, what you need to do is get rich, because you will be squeezed to where you have no choice but to make a choice. And if you don't make a choice will be made for you. You will be poor. The government will be in control of your entire life. You will essentially be on welfare, and the rich people will control everything else. So answering your question or comment here, Esther, has nothing to do with the tax breaks that Donald Trump or anybody else is going to get. It's about inflation. That tax affects everybody the same way, based on, well, not the same way, based on how much money you have and your resources and your ability to create resources. I did a whole live stream on this about 2.5 weeks ago called Why the Middle Class is Going Away. So if you didn't see that, go watch it. It's on YouTube. All right, everybody got that? Okay, so everything that I say, folks, I'm on the record. Everybody heard me. Anything you hear me say, I'm on the record. I have gone in depth, in detail on every single thing you heard me say here today. Even if I only touched on it for 2 minutes, I got probably 3 hours on it somewhere else. Just go look it up or send a DM. My assistant watches my DMs and we will tell you where to find it. I got a show that comes out every single day called Work on Your Game. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on Apple. It comes out every single day. I do about 20 to 30 minutes per day on different topics. Usually it's not current events. I will talk about current events every now and then. My lives, I tend to do current events, but my evergreen stuff is usually stuff that you can use at any time. So when I tell you I'm on the record, things like this, I'm on the record. Everybody got it. I've been publishing content for 20 years. I don't look that old, right? I ain't that old. I've been publishing content since my early 20s. Now I'm in my early 40s. I'm 42 years of age. So I got 20 years of receipts. Okay, check me. I got 20 years of receipts on all this. So Esther, hopefully that answers your question. All right, I hope you all got that. All right, MILF Shake. Glad, I appreciate that. So Chris said I had to pay my stimulus back. That was a ripoff. Yeah, well, everybody's paying their stimulus back. Anybody who got a stimulus check, you paid it back already in inflation. Your eggs cost a little bit more. Every time you buy eggs, you're paying it back. Every time you pay rent, you're paying it back. All right, all of these things are being paid back whether you want to or not. All right, y'all understand, anything the government gives you, you will pay it back whether you want to pay it back or not. Okay, when you go to the doctor, you're paying it back because it costs more. When you pay for your pharmaceutical, what do they call those things? Prescription, you're paying it back. All right, when you buy a new set of clothes, you're paying it back. All right, when you pay your electric bill, you're paying it back. All right, every single thing you pay for, you're paying back anything the government has ever, quote unquote, given you. The government is $35 trillion in debt. They can't give you anything. Okay, so anything Kamala Harris tells you she's going to give you, she's lying. She don't got it. She ain't got it. Anything Donald Trump tells you he's going to give you, he's lying. He ain't got it. All right, they can't give you anything. Okay, so any of you being fooled by that nonsense, they're both lying. All right, they ain't got it. They can't give it to you. You can't give what you ain't got. The government has no money. They cannot give you anything. Okay, everybody got it? All right, whether you got a stimulus check or not, doesn't matter. Warren says, so the solution is just get rich. Yes, that's the solution. Yes, get rich. That is the solution. Because in the future, it's only going to be rich people and poor people. So which one would you rather be, Warren? Rich or poor? Pick one. And if you don't make a decision will be made for you. That's the way life works. Let me ask you a question. Which one do you think the government wants you to be, poor or rich? They want you to be poor because they can control you. When you're poor, you can be controlled. When you're rich, you can't be controlled. The government can't tell Elon Musk what to do because he's rich. They can't tell, if Donald Trump wasn't president, they couldn't tell him what to do because he's rich. They can't tell, who's another well-known rich person? Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, Beyonce, Jeff Bezos. They can't tell them what to do because they're rich. I'm talking people who are publicly noted for being rich. You can't tell them what to do because they're rich. They got the money to do whatever they want. If you're poor, you have no money, you got to do what you're told. Is this true or not? What I'm telling you is there will be no middle. So any of you who considers yourself middle class, this is going away. There will be no middle. There's going to be rich people and poor people. Which side do you want to be on? And you better make a choice. If you don't make a choice, the government will decide for you. And the last thing you want is the government making decisions for you. All right, that's what you don't want. All right, forget about Harris or Trump. What you don't want is anything from the government making decisions for your life. I don't care who wins the election. That's what you really need to think about. Okay, so all that said, folks, let's wrap this up. I got to go to the bathroom. I got other stuff to do. Everybody have a great day. Tomorrow, 8 a.m., work on your game. We out of here.